All right, thanks, Jesse. All right, so no promises, but you get to see something new today, so that's great. All right, so hi, I am, like Jesse mentioned, I'm Talon Wadsworth. I'm the lead designer for Adobe XD. There it is right there. And when I tell people that, probably the first question they always ask me is that one, which is the one we're going to answer hopefully today. But initially, this is my response. Maybe not in that of like Jon Stewart sarcastic way, but I really wanted to know why. You know, and I think the answer to everybody was obvious. Is like, well, we're Adobe, right? We do layers. We do all the things that you need inside of an app. But I just wanted to show this to you. Actually, it's very washed out here. But I think it emphasizes this was the very first UI design for Adobe XD. This is like the very first slide, the very first time I ever thought, what could this look like? This was it. And it's so innocent and pristine, and it's doesn't have a lot on there. And I was like, well, I don't want to add layers to this. What does layers even mean in this context? But of course, you know, like there's a reason. And of course, we do layers. And so my next step after kind of coming to terms with that was just to do a quick survey of some files on my desktop and see layers in there. So yeah, that's a lot of layers. And this is a very complex document, of course. But I kept kind of looking and just kind of, again, with trying to look at it with fresh eyes and just look at what we've sort of come to with layers. And again, we built a lot on there. I mean, there's so much going on here. And how do you start parsing something like this? Or even like this. Like this is getting into like, this is actually from our icon team. And they have very specific needs, right? Very specific workflows they built up here on layers. And so I don't even know where to start with this layers panel. Here, actually, this little inception, this is actually Photoshop inside of Photoshop, which is always really fun to see at Adobe. And again, we've got a lot of work there. And I just want to bring this back for a second because again, I'm sort of looking at that in very stark contrast to this and trying to wrap my head around, okay, what are we going to do here? And so, you know, seeing some other examples, and it's like, oh, well, this isn't bad. And I like this designer. I like how very clean, very economical, right? Of course, they're closed, so they're not open here. And then you see something like this. I'm just going to zoom in just a little bit more, and this is this is a very big project, and this is what that says. And but most of your time spent here, I think, at this point, is like, how do you work with that? Just like navigating and managing that. So I'm thinking, all right, okay, this is the problem I'm faced with in designing a brand new app from scratch. And I just sort of did a quick sort of like, well, who has better ideas? And of course, we all like to help each other, and we all have our own ways that we work with layers. And this was what I found, which was said over 500,000 results for Photoshop layer management. It's like, okay, this is a big problem. So what are we going to do here? And so, okay, we've seen and we've experienced layers, and we've seen what it looks like on all of the apps. But we really wanted to say, okay, what's going on there? Like, how are we really using layers? And so we started asking people, how do you use layers? And this is actually something I think that we try to do very early on in the development of Adobe XD, which is just ask questions. Of course, we're going to get some answers, as we expect. It's a little cut off, but as you can see, people use layers for a lot of things. Yeah. And I'm sure you probably recognize some of those up there, and of course some are not. But you know, this was really the response. You know, you ask a simple question, expect some answers. All right, but then the thing that I always like about I think user research and interviews is I really look for those little details and those little asides, to really get at the heart of what people are doing within a tool. And so I just pulled up a few that really resonated with me and really kind of inspired me to think about layers in kind of new ways. Layers don't matter until they matter. make things as as simple as possible and no simpler, right? That's a really hard challenge. And just other people saying look, it's just work at a certain point. So how to fit all of these activities, these things that we do with layers, right, into a very cohesive story within a brand new application. So just coming back to XD, right, from the very beginning, when I was asked that question, again, there was the Jon Stewart sort of response, but I was really like, well, we'll add layers when we see a clear need for them, right? When we've sort of reached the end of our runway with what we can do in the app and help designers work really quickly within the app, that's when we'd bring layers to the table. But we want to make sure there was a really clear use case in mind, and they were really sort of fit within a workflow, right, and the workflow that was tailored for mobile app designers and product designers within Adobe XD. And so what we then did was actually take some of those big things all those answers that we had, and we started to sort of categorize them kind of within basically some actions or some workflows. We have kind of more ad hoc workflows that we're doing, right, from that big list, those things that happen that we have to do while we're working, right? These very transient states, right? Just the working of the design, so locking and unlocking, hiding and showing, and then we have kind of more deliberate sort of organization of objects within as our design system grows, right? We have to start organizing it just to be able to work with the scale of the things that we're designing now. And of course, then there's the other things that we don't like spending, none of us probably like spending time on, right? Which is doing the things that we have to do to manage our file to communicate with someone else, whether it's another designer we're working with or a developer, right? They're the things that we do to make that be as seamless as possible, right? And so we're really thinking about these in really clearly defined workflows kind of within the app is really kind of where we started. And so we really started asking ourselves, which is like, okay, layers inside of XD, well, what if layers were smarter? What if they actually showed you kind of what you need when you need it? And nothing more, right? And it's responsive to you as you're designing. That was kind of one of the first sort of questions that I asked. And so I built this prototype. I'm going to kind of walk you through it a little bit. The concept, I sort of called it, was local layers. And it was really, as you can see, actually, hopefully it's not that cut off, down there on the right, actually, there is a layers panel, but it's going to start displaying only the layers of the things that you have selected, or the things that are around the things that you have selected. Again, this is really focused on those ad hoc workflows, right? Those really easy sort of sub-selection of objects. Again, feeling that panel being responsive to what I'm doing, right? Selecting something, actually showing me more information of the things that are around there. So then I could have quick access to, again, managing the objects just within my context, right? I had this other artboard with the broader widget, and I'm not seeing any of those layers. I'm only seeing the layers of the things that I'm working on. Of course, this is getting a little, again, we're using design, and we're using sort of animation and motion to, again, clearly tell that story. So if I have a quick glance at that layers panel, I know exactly what's selected and what's not, or I know exactly what's grouped together and what's not, or I know exactly what's right there in my working context. I'll actually saving as well. I forgot that I added that in this prototype. So this was just like a first idea, right? How can a layers panel be much more contextual to how you're working and actually use design and interaction to actually help you do your work faster, again, for those ad hoc workflows, as well as some of those quick export you saw there at the end as well. And the thing we did after this is that we actually just, again, we got feedback. We actually showed this to our pre-release users, and we got their feedback, and they gave us a lot of feedback. I think we had over 200 responses on the video and the prototype that we shared, and it was great. I mean, again, this is amazing, really a chance for the team to really, again, think about the problem and think about the problems that the users or the designers are having, and actually, again, continue to make this better. All right, and so this was a really great review, and actually, the thing we kind of learned here was they're like, okay, well, we like it, but not all the time. So we thought, okay, that's great. So actually, today, feel the dreams reference there, we actually went and built it now. And today, I'm going to show you a quick demo of layers in XD. So. Just going to mirror this display quickly. Let's hide in Keynote. Okay. Oh, of course they're minimized because I've been switching. All right, so here is actually a build of XD, and as you can see, we have a layers panel. It's pretty amazing. We've come a long way. Of course, I'm only seeing here everything sort of nice and neatly collapsed. Can't do any naming in this build, but I can expand and actually show all the objects that are actually on canvas. All right, so here I can expand and do whatever I need to do, just like normal. But when I click on an artboard, I start to see this sort of local context behavior, actually showing me the things near or around the thing that I'm selecting. So here I have this group selected. And if I actually dive, it's actually here I think it's showing me the group and the background rectangle behind it. But if I double click into that group, the layers panel is now only showing me the layers within that group. So I can go in and do whatever I need to do there and rearrange these and make edits. And as I escape out, I can come back up. Of course, a lot of people gave us feedback on that from the prototype and said, well, that's not enough. Well, what's really cool about actually having it in the build is we work with just a phenomenal team of engineers. And they actually built some controls for me to quickly try some different things. So if I'm just going to tap a key here, and actually showing me more. So now here's a behavior. If I click on an artboard, it's showing me all the layers for the artboard. So again, not that very local, very context-heavy sort of mode, but actually showing me more of what's happening, but again, restricting it just to that artboard. So then if I click back on the pasteboard, I see all of my layers there. If I click on and navigate around, I'm seeing just what I need to see to work. All right, and I'm going to switch over to another file here that's a little more complicated. All right, so like this is still the problem, right? And I think this is the thing that we're really trying to challenge ourselves to create a great experience is, a project of this size, and you can already see the artboards are far outstripping, any layers I may have had in that previous document. But again, if I click on an artboard, it's just showing me the layers for that artboard. So again, this is, of course, the next phase is actually getting this actually in a build out into the world with the broader group of designers checking out XD through the preview. And just keep asking that question and keep iterating. And again, we're doing monthly releases. And so we can take that feedback and actually put it right back into the product. So I think that's really exciting. And then I'm just going to come back here. Again, I only have a little bit of time today. I think that was, actually, am I short? Wow, I'm really short. So yeah, thanks. And I actually want to know to all of you is how do you use layers? So you can hit me up on Twitter at mrtalon.com, and make sure to put the tags on there. And again, we'd love to kind of actually see you using this in the build in the coming months and giving us feedback. So, all right.